It was supposed to be an easy, part-time delivery job. I would make a few extra bucks, help pay my rent, pay down some credit card debt. But for a job delivering food, things went from mundane to dangerous. Remarkably fast. I worked very early morning hours in a warehouse and would get off work fairly early in the day. I had not planned on getting a second job at all. The pay was decent, but when my roommate left me high and dry to move in with his girlfriend without notice, I was left in a financial lurch. That was when I decided to look for an easy part-time delivery job to get into. It wound up being DoorDash or Uber, and I figured I would rather deliver food than people. So I signed up. When I started, the pay was not great. I suppose when you decide your own hours, it can get messy. I thought it would work around my other job schedule, so it was the best I could do. Honestly, if that was the only problem, it would have been fine. But the customers, now that is where it gets disturbing. I know a lot of delivery drivers deal with weird folks, but when food is involved, it makes most people even more intolerable. Most customers are fine, but the people I have been working with for the last few weeks, well, let's just say if I make the wrong move now, things might get bad, very bad. Now that I know what I know, I have been at this for a month now, and the first 2 weeks delivering had been uneventful, draining and tedious, but uneventful. I live in a fairly small town, so there was not a lot of deliveries available on the average night. Though with how small it was, I was surprised how many people would still use the app for delivery. I was lucky in that sense. And it seemed like barely any other people were delivering here. With no competition, I got a decent number of deliveries at first, though most of the people were on the older side and lousy tippers. Regardless of how the service was, I was still struggling and starting to get disheartened. I thought I might need a different job to help cover the gap and pay my rent until I could get a new roommate. Then I accepted a delivery that changed it all. It was a delivery to a small retirement home near the outskirts of town. I was not expecting much since many of the older clients were stingy and demanding. So I went to retrieve the order. Most of the deliveries I made were from the few restaurants we had in town, as well as some fast food places that were close. This delivery was from a curious little Greek place that had just opened up a month earlier. It was called Phages, and served some classic Greek food with a twist. From the ratings I had seen, it was pretty popular so far. I figured I was going to be getting a lot more orders from this place. I arrived as soon as I could to the small restaurant. It was a fairly dingy building. Not much polish had been put into the grand opening, and I was surprised by the state it was in. I walked past the sign and saw a name in Greek on the sign in smaller font. Phagos. Then in larger font the name of the restaurant, Phages. I stepped inside and heard the ringing of a smell bell. I waited for someone to come to the counter and looked around a bit. The dining area was very small and no customers were currently there. Inside the place did look nice and tidy. The decor was not bad either, and the vibe seemed right for the type of restaurant it seemed like. I saw they even had a lot of classical paintings on the walls, and I admired the effort put into making it look good. Though the Goya of Saturn or Kronos in Greek, eating his children on the wall was a bit off-putting, especially considering it was right by what looked like the kitchen. For having just opened, I was surprised it was not as busy inside, but I guess if people were grabbing to-go orders it was more work for me. So I wouldn't complain. As I looked around, the pervasive smell struck me. I like Greek food, but nothing in there smelled like that. It had a sickly sweet aroma. It was just odd enough where I could not decide if it smelled appealing or disgusting. And the few other scents I noted, I could not quite describe at all. My musings were cut short when a small woman emerged from the kitchen and locked eyes on me. She looked ancient and weathered, but the gleam in her eyes possessed an energy that belied her age. She was scrutinizing me as I approached, and I suddenly felt a disturbing sensation. Before the awkward silence lingered any longer, she suddenly smiled and greeted me. "Are you the driver?" I nodded my head and she looked thrilled. Yes, good. My name is Anthropos, but my friends just call me Annie. Welcome. I am so glad you will be working with us. Please let me get you something for the trouble. Before you head out. She was already moving past me to grab some items from the counter, and I tried to tell her not to worry and I had to go. But she would not hear it. In a few minutes she had made me a tasty little flatbread snack and was crooning over me like a protective mother figure. "Thank you so much, ma'am. But I do need to head out with that delivery. She nodded her head and smiled and placed her hand to her head. Oh yes, of course. I am sorry. I just love to serve people. It should be ready now. You wait here and I will go get it. I sat on the small bench by the front door to wait. In another moment she was back, holding a large box that almost tottered out of her grip. I rushed over to help her, and she thanked me again. Now this is a special order for you, take to our friends at the retirement home. Talk to Demos. He will take the delivery. Only give the box to Demos. Do not leave it there unless he is there to take it. She handed me the large box, and when I hefted it I was amazed that she could carry it. It felt like it weighed almost 100 pounds. She was beaming at me and followed me to the door to open it. I thanked her and tried to return the smile through the strain of handling the box. I nodded my head and left back outside to get to my truck. She seemed very nice, but something about the entire place seemed a bit off. I had never delivered such a giant order of food before, and it was strange it was in a crate that looked more in common with the freight I moved in my day job than it did a food delivery. The smell was strange too. Not bad, but it was that same sweet smell from before. I felt like it was just off enough to make it less appealing. Like it had too much of one ingredient to cover something else up. I supposed it did not matter, and I went on my way to make the delivery. My destination was the Pickman's Green retirement home. It was nice from what I had seen of the outside, but I had never been in personally. I was already dreading the more onerous customers who would be upset by some problem with the food and just give next to nothing for a tip. But I moved on, and in about 10 minutes I was there. I arrived in good time and rang the bell at the reception desk. I waited for a response, but nothing came. I was about to leave the food there, but I remembered my instructions and waited. Eventually a nurse emerged from an office in the back. She moved towards me and I saw her name was Nancy. She was very pretty and I smiled at her when she regarded me. Good evening. Visiting hours are over now, but is there something else I can help you with? I returned the greeting and gestured to the box I had set down nearby. Yes, please. I am looking for Demos. I am supposed to drop this food off for him and hopefully however many folks he is going to share with. I chuckled at the notion of one person getting the giant crate of food. But instead of relaxing, the woman stared at me for a moment with a nervous look in her eyes. Demos. Yes. One moment, I will get him. I waited around until an older man emerged the back. He looked angry and stared at me for a moment before regarding the nurse. This is him? You said he was asking for me? The young nurse nodded and looked concerned. The situation felt weirdly tense for a simple delivery and I was not sure what to say. He looked back at me, then the crate and scowled. I just decided to declare myself. Yes, I have your DoorDash delivery. Annie at Phagus said to give it directly to you and not just leave it. I watched his reaction, and he looked weirdly mistrustful. Eventually he just nodded his head and brushed past me. To my surprise he effortlessly hefted the box up and left. He had not acknowledged me at all. I called out to him. What about? The nurse stepped in front of me and had a very fake smile plastered on her face. Here is your tip. Thank you again. I took the small envelope she had handed me and I was about to ask if they needed anything else before she told me to leave since they would be locking up for the night. I thought it was odd, but I did not want to stay there any longer than I had to anyway. I left the building and went back to my car. As I sat down, I figured I would see how they managed to shortchange me. They had selected the cash tip option and I had a feeling that in this case, somehow it would screw me over. That Demos guy looked like a real bastard and I figured it might not be cash at all but an angry note. It turned out I was wrong. Not only was it cash, but the envelope held $800. I had to do a double take and recount it, but it was the same amount again. I had no idea why the hell they had given me so much money. Though I did see a small piece of paper mixed in with the stack of $100 bills. I unfolded it and was confused by what it said. Take this and do not come back. Do not take any more delivery jobs here. For your sake. I thought it was so strange. Someone was warning me not to do any more deliveries for them by giving me a bunch of cash as a tip. If anything, it was even more incentive to do so. But I did wonder why someone would put it there. I was foolish enough to believe at the time that it was because someone else might want to be saving those deliveries to get the huge tips for themselves. I wish that had been why. Against the advice of the odd warning, I did respond to the next delivery for Pickman's Green that I saw. It was another order from Phagus, and when I arrived, Annie was there again and greeted me like a long-lost child. She was a little too friendly and pinched my cheeks, saying I was not eating enough and that I was all skin and bones and that she needed to fatten me up. As cute as the doting grandmother act was, I was mostly there for the huge payday from those jobs. Each time I had made a delivery to the retirement home, I made a cash tip of around $800. For that I would deal with a little embarrassment from the restaurant owner. That night when I made my deliveries there were 2 boxes and I needed to take them in one at a time. I waited by the reception desk to be let in, but instead of the younger, pretty nurse Nancy, there was a young man I hadn't seen before, had deep bags under his eyes and looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He saw me struggling with the boxes and did not move to help. Just stood there and said, "Delivery?" I nodded my head and grunted, struggling with another large crate that felt like it had a whole cow inside. After the boxes were inside, the young man moved to take them. But I stepped in. "Actually, I am only supposed to leave that with Demos. Could you go get him?" The man glared at me and I shrunk back involuntarily, as if I had offended him by asking. I reiterated, "My instructions are to only leave the delivery with Demos." "I'm sorry." The man glowered at me another moment and flatly stated, "He is not here right now." I was not sure how to respond. I did not know why they would not have told me. I wondered if I should just leave the food with this nurse instead. But the way he was acting felt off. I was about to agree, when the door opened and Demos walked in. When the nurse saw him, they broke into an argument in a language I did not recognize. The tone sounded off though, like it was too guttural. It did not sound like Greek or any other dialect I could place. But whatever they were talking about, it sounded like an argument. That I had no idea what they were saying. I was getting uncomfortable waiting for them to stop fighting so I could get my tip. But then Demos struck the other man after he gestured at me and drew a finger across his throat. I did not like the situation and I ran, leaving the box with them and just trying to get the hell out of there. I was not sure what set them off, but I felt like I was a moment away from being attacked. I decided to ignore the orders for the retirement home for a while. I had saved a good deal of money and it would get me by for a little bit. It was just last night that I was convinced to come back and make my most recent delivery. I had received a direct phone call from Annie at Phagus. I was not sure how she had gotten my number, but she was asking me to make a big delivery for a catering event at Pickman's Green. She said she would pay me $2,000 plus tip if I would go. Despite what had happened last time I delivered for them, I couldn't turn down the crazy payday, so I agreed to go. I arrived early at the restaurant and stepped inside. The place felt oddly cold, like no one had been cooking for a while. I shouted into the back, announcing myself, "Hello?" But no one answered. I looked around and saw the light seemed oddly dim as well. It seemed like they had closed early for something. Eventually Annie emerged from the back room. She smiled as she saw me, but the dim light and the bags under her eyes gave her face an unfortunately hideous quality that I wouldn't dare mention to her directly. I shrunk back a bit involuntarily. Despite her ghoulish countenance, she seemed elated that I was there. "Oh my, there you are. Come in, come in. We have the delivery all ready. We are so grateful you are helping us serve all of those people there." She ushered me toward the kitchen and when I stepped in I was shocked to see the gigantic crate that was waiting for me. I looked at her and had to protest. "I'm sorry, I don't even think I could lift this without a forklift, ma'am. This looks like a month worth of food. How are they going to use so much? And why is it in this type of industrial crate?" She brushed off my words and was unconcerned. "Oh, don't worry about that. It may be heavy, but my sons will help you carry it out and Demos can help you when you get there. It is not just one meal, but a large portion of our fresh specialty. It needs to be kept safe. It is our restaurant's entire body of work." She smiled again, but I was unsure. I noticed that 2 teenage boys had entered the room at some point. Annie spoke to them in a language I couldn't recognize. I was fairly sure it was not Greek either. It unnerved me since it sounded more like the men arguing at Pickman's Green that night. The 2 boys turned to me and then stood on one side of the giant crate and I got the hint. Annie bid us goodbye and good luck and said she had another one to get started on. I hefted the other side of the crate and it was incredibly heavy. At least 200 pounds. We managed to make it to my truck, huffing and puffing, and I had to strap it down and secure it before I could get going. The two boys watched me wordlessly as I worked, not offering to help, but not interfering. The silent treatment was awkward and I considered trying to make small talk. But I decided against it and just left, giving them a small wave. As I drove to Pickman's Green, I considered how strange this delivery was. This was not even on record with the app or company. She had called me directly and now I was hauling this freight-sized box of food to the already suspicious folks at that shady retirement home. As I was considering the situation, I heard a loud banging noise from the back of the truck. I panicked at first and thought I might have hit something. Then I realized I might not have tied it down correctly and the box might have shifted or gotten banged up by something. I looked back and did not see it shifting, but I wanted to make sure before continuing in case it did get loose and fall out. I turned off the engine and stepped out, almost in unison with my door closing. I heard another thump coming from the back. It made me jump and this time I knew it had been from the box. But to my concern, it was not shifting. I was not even moving anymore. How could it be making noise? I inched closer, suddenly concerned by the silence all around me on the almost deserted highway at dusk. I waited for another few minutes, anxiously expecting something to happen, and it was quiet. A car drove past me, breaking the absolute stillness of the situation. But no noises from the box. Eventually I decided it was my imagination and I got back in the truck and continued on my way. I arrived at Pickman's Green and as I stepped out I thought I heard another sound. Like a hard exhalation of breath from someone. I looked around and saw I was still alone. But the situation was disturbing me. I rushed inside to hopefully find Demos and get this over with. Inside I saw he was waiting near reception where the nurses would normally be. The permanent scowl still etched on his face. As soon as I walked in he left the desk and just brushed past me, bumping into my shoulder and just walking past me. I thought I even heard him mutter something under his breath. I walked with him as we went to my truck. He stopped and turned around and demanded, "Open the back and let's get this over with." I did as he instructed, not wanting to spend any more time with him than I had to. As I was undoing the straps I caught him subtly taking a picture of my license plate with his phone. Before I could say anything, he turned to me and asked, "How is it coming?" I decided to just answer him instead of asking about his weird behavior. "It's all set. Let's get it inside. Do you have a dolly or something?" He frowned at me and pointed to the building. "It's barely a short walk. Come on, use your back." His smile was worse than his frown and he showed me a toothy grin with hideously brown, almost needle-like teeth. I just nodded my head and bent down to get ready to lift. We raised the giant crate out of the flatbed and started moving. I was trying to back up with it, but the angle was off when we tried to turn and I told him I needed to set it down. He ignored me saying, "We are almost there," and he kept going. My fingers started slipping and I told him I needed to put it down again. Until eventually it slipped and the box crashed down to the ground on my side. Demos shouted what was likely a curse in whatever his native language was and bent down to inspect the box. My face was red and I was embarrassed despite the fact that he had not been listening to me. Before I had time to concern myself with his rebuke, my heart froze when I heard a distinct knocking sound and it was coming from inside the box. The knocking sounded again and I thought I heard a muffled cry. I froze, looking at the box and hearing the sound, then looking at Demos, as if to confirm he heard it too. Then the angry look on his face vanished and he flashed a horrid grin and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. On second thought, I will take it from here and get Seth to help me bring this the rest of the way in. He whistled loudly and the young man from before showed up, running to meet us. He turned back to me. "Don't trouble yourself with this or any other burdens you might have. It's not your problem anymore. You take this and buy yourself something nice. All right, my friend? Drive safe and give my regards to Anthropo and her restaurant." He continued grinning at me as he pressed the envelope into my hand and turned back to the box. Both men hefted the giant crate and as they lifted it I heard the banging sound increase in volume and tempo. The last thing I heard as they carried it inside was something that sounded like the word help. I left in a horrified daze. I was not sure if I should call the police or just go home and hide. I know what I heard. I did not see anything. But I am not crazy. Something was in there. Or worse, someone. The more I thought about it, the worse the situation felt. I did not know if it was some weird human trafficking business I had gotten roped into. But I couldn't figure out why they had me delivering those smaller boxes first. I thought about Annie and how she had seemed so nice. But so insistent I work for her. I was afraid she knew more about me than I thought. She had found my number and worse. Maybe she knew where I lived. Honestly, I do not know if I should be telling anyone about this now for that matter. But when more of the pieces came together, the real danger has become clear and I fear something terrible might happen. Something I have to warn people about. The final revelation came to me when I started to question the true nature of the mysterious restaurant and their client at Pickman's Green. I stumbled upon it while researching a bit about Annie and the restaurant. I found out very little about her or her history directly, though it was in piecing together her name and the restaurant on a notepad, where I realized the horror had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. I knew she had introduced herself as Anthropo or Annie for short. Then I considered her restaurant's name, Phagus. I put the two together on my note and the morbid implications were too much to bear. Annie's restaurant. Anthropo's restaurant. Annie's Phagus. Anthropo's Phagus. Anthropophagus. The word sounded familiar. I looked up the definition. I think I know what was really in that box now and I am never making a delivery there again. I was 18 years old, only starting my first year of college in a new town which I won't say the name of here. At that time I usually would be found playing soccer with the new people I met around campus. I had lived in the same town for most of my life. So forming new friendships to tackle the loneliness of a new town was just what I needed. In the first months of class, I found the deepest bonds a young adult could ask for. kicking around the soccer ball with the other hormonal miscreants I lived around. Among them was a peculiar guy named Tom. Tom, who had no feet. Nobody really called as much attention to Tom as you would think. But I noticed on my first day on the field how he would just hover a few feet over the rest of us. The ball moving away from his direction and the other players just running toward it. I was scared speechless, but nobody else seemed to mind. And by the end of the game, I had somewhat gotten used to it. After all, I was new in town and this was my one chance to make a good impression on a social clique who could fill my boring hours when I wasn't in class. However, one day in November, on a cool, crisp afternoon, I would finally grow the guts to speak to Tom about his circumstance. It started when my leg muscles were so sore from all the running. They were practically begging me to hydrate my body. Then, out of the blue, there he stood, by the water cooler. Tom? He looked at me and smiled as he filled his paper cone. Hey Jake, looking forward to your break from school? I cleared my throat. My heart was racing, but it had little to do with the exercise I put my body through. The notion of continuing any of his small talk was non-existent from my head as the looming question broke free from my lips. Tom, how the hell are you doing that with your legs? His smile, surprisingly, did not break. He chuckled lightly, like I had said something completely casual and not accusatory. But his amicable stare never felt more intense. What do you mean, Jake? I mean, I'm not sure if anyone's ever brought it up to you, but you don't have feet. You just hover over us and the ball just moves on its own. And no one ever makes any sort of deal out of it. It's creepy, man. And also when I've asked other people, they somehow have nothing to say about it. Like it's a totally fucking normal thing? This addition was only partially true. As a result of my embedded peer pressure, the topic of Tom's feet never really entered the topic of conversation at all. Between how busy we were ranking which girl around campus was the hottest and which professor was most likely to get fired for ogling at any one of them, I had only inquired about Tom's feet during a deep talking session after a few beers with my buddy, Charles, in which he nervously looked down to the floor and muttered, I don't know, maybe it's just your eyes playing tricks on you. It never bothered me or anyone else for all I know. Minutes after that interaction he had faked an urgent event happening the next day, prompting him to get up and leave, leaving me with the bar tab. Who did you ask, Jake? Tom said. Who did you talk to about me? I was at a loss for words. This guy was more than just odd or creepy now. He really had a threatening presence over me. Tom, if I've offended you, I'm sorry, but my mouth grew drier, my racing heart growing more intense, and I stiffly broke out into cold sweats as I began stammering. I've known you for 2 months. But I've only ever seen you on this field. You have other places to go in town, don't you? It doesn't even bother me much. I was just curious. Tom laughed. His eyes saw right through me as he hovered closer to my face. His grin looked cheery, satisfied by my apparent fear. I saw hunger in those eyes. Like a wild animal, we stared at each other in uncomfortable silence for what felt like hours. Then I opened my mouth to speak, but he spoke over me. I think you better go home. Good luck on those finals. Tom. I cautiously backed away, saying nothing to him, and then got into my crappy sedan and left. I would never set foot back on that field, much like someone else I know, and sincerely hope I will never see again.